Yeah, and it was the compromise of there's two things I want, and one thing I only get this one chance of. And I tried playing on a main stage, and while that was fun, it was not something I thought I was gonna. It doesn't have that much value.
Right, so here I am with a very, very exciting guest. This is z1ronic, who you might know as a content creator and streamer, or possibly a guest analyst, but I know him as a player. I know him as a nasty Blackbeard. So, z1ronic, welcome.
Thank you, thank you.
I want to start off this interview talking about the beginning of just how you got started in Siege and, how did you get your competitive start? Because if you look at Wikipedia, we've got two contrasting like eras of when you played. But one of them says Delta Light, the other says Warrior Team France. So how did you get your start, and when did you start playing competitive?
Well, the start was very scruffy because I was just a ranked player like everyone else. There wasn't really anything to compete in.
Yeah.
So it became this thing where different rank stacks would just fight each other, and we could do these like replay match things or play the same team again.
Oh yeah.
In the old rank system, and we would end up for I don't know like 4 or 5 hours just playing against the same team again and again and again. And it's honestly some of the best like FPS fun I've had was just grinding the same teams over and over. We would win a map, they would win a map, and you go like that until midnight or early morning. Then eventually small tournaments started coming up, things kind of like Go Force and stuff like that. And this little rank stack we had, which would have been the Delta Light team, we signed up for a few of those and just had fun. I think we won a couple, but not a lot. And then generally placed in, we either got to the finals or quarters every time.
Yeah.
But there was teams that were smart and taking it serious a bit earlier than us. What eventually turned into G2 or Penta at that time, they had scrim plans and everything.
Wow.
By the time that most other teams just showed up and played ranked together. But they would then invite some of those ranked teams to play scrims, right?
Yeah.
So that would have been the beginnings, I guess. Then fast forward some months at least, and there's this team that needs one player in Pro League, and they're looking for just one player.
And that was Warrior Team France?
Yes, exactly.
I was gonna ask because I was very confused how a 4 French player team ended up with a Dane on the roster, but I guess that answers that.
Well, I mean, even if we go forward to playing Ducks, that was 4 French people at one point as well, and then me. But they were missing one person, and they wanted someone that could IGL, and they all spoke and understood English more than fine enough to communicate. And I thought I'd give it a try. I have some experience team leading outside of games.
Yeah.
So I wanted to see if that could work in an FPS setting. In hindsight, it was probably way too harsh and way too strict. And I think I probably demanded too much, what do you call it, structure.
Yeah.
Too early on in I don't even want to call it a career, but too early on in my experience as a player. But stayed there for a bit, and then as things happen, you will either get stuck or you'll get better offers. I got a better offer, moved to what then turned into playing Ducks.
Yeah.
It was originally Team Cooler Master, I believe, but then actually moved to become playing Ducks.
Yeah. And so I do want to ask, because you mentioned that your leadership style might have been too strict for like the time in the career.
Yep.
Do you think in a more modern esports setting where it's much more professional, do you think that leadership style of being like taking it very seriously would do better, or do you think maybe it's still too harsh even for nowadays?
Depends. The it requires that you get to grow as a team, and you give people I guess the space and respect and all of that. You can't expect people to instantly you can't expect people that haven't worked under such a leadership or this kind of team to just work out instantly. It'll take a long time, and there's a lot of acceptance from the org and stuff that will be necessary. You have to spend a ton of time on building up that culture, right?
Yeah.
You can't just dump some boss man in and then he yells at them, do this, do this. Because if you do the strict leadership style, or at least the way that I like to do it, then there's also full accountability and responsibility, right? Like if I tell you to do something and you do it, but it doesn't work, then that's my mistake.
Yeah.
You did exactly what you were asked. In my experience from a prior job, when people make individual decisions in a team, it can often fuck things up very badly.
Yeah.
And I've always thought that it's better to fail together and then learn from that mistake than it is to have people try to course correct by themselves. Because if you go out and make a choice that it might be better, it might be a better choice, but the rest of the team isn't on the same wavelength at the same time,
Yeah.
no one really learns from it. Just that at that point you were smarter, better than everyone else, and then you kind of get this like star player issue where the rest of the team will be happy that you did good because we won, but they will lose trust in you
Yeah. And I
because
think
you didn't do what the team was gonna do, right?
Yeah, and I think there's also that classic saying, I want to say it comes from Counter-Strike, where it's like, if a wrong decision made as a team has a chance to work out, the right decision made by 5 separate individuals is more likely to fail. And it's like,
Yeah.
Sure, it could pay
I mean,
off,
that-
but
That was how we. I've done firefighting before, and
yeah,
in that industry, it doesn't really matter if you tell me to do something, it's gonna get done.
yeah,
Because there might be someone else that I can't communicate it with at that time doing something else that requires that to work.
yeah,
Of course, as a player or as a team member or whatever you want to call it, you can always give feedback. You can always like a simple acknowledgement of any kind of call is worth a ton. I would never fault anyone for saying I cannot do that. You tell them to do something in game. You say you go get this job done. They say I can't do that. Fine, we'll put another guy on it. You take his job.
yeah,
The problem is when you say yes and do something else. And I was always very, very harsh on that thing in particular. But I don't think it was necessary to be that harsh because whatever was on the line at the end of the day is just if you want to lose a match.
yeah,
And sure, that can scale up to if you win or lose a big game, right? It could be a Pro League final, invitational, whatever it might be. But at the end of the day, it's still
just a video
still
game.
just games.
Yeah,
And keeping all the players happy, healthy, and
motivated.
in a good mindset is worth more than getting it done.
Yeah, yeah.
That took some years to learn.
Yeah, and so I did want to ask about when you joined that roster that turned into playing Ducks with Shate and Panari and I swear to God I've practiced this. El
El
Tunisiano.
Tunisiano.
Yeah, it gets me every time.
That took me a year as well.
What was this roster like? Because these are, Panari's a Finn, Shate's a Finn. You've got some more Nordic brethren here as opposed to like a bunch of Frenchmen. And also, like, you've got some pretty cracked out players here, especially for the time. Like, Shate's fucking nasty. Panari was nasty for the time. Tunisiano, oh god, I've screwed it up already. He was cracked too. Like, I watched those odds and I was like, yo, he's nasty. And he didn't have that long of a career. What was it like playing with these guys? And like, what?
I mean, the whole team was a funny little thing because the players you mentioned there is like a third of what actually was on the team through the time that it was called that. We had another Dane at one point, Tweakstar. We had a guy called Acid Rain, another Finn. There was so many people on that roster, and it was us trying to figure out how to get all of these players to play together and actually do well together because everyone was really good individually. In their own separate ways. Like some people were just really good gunners, some were good at thinking and maneuvering around, roaming, whatever. But it never really gelled proper.
Yeah.
When we were doing well, it felt like we could snowball very easily. Then the vibes were good and that, but when we started to struggle, we had a really difficult time correcting that.
Yeah.
We tried to do a lot with swapping around IGL roles, having 2 IGLs, having 1, having everyone free to do what they wanted, but have a plan. And nothing ever really worked.
Yeah.
Then this is so many years ago now. It's getting hard to remember. But when we then swapped to having we merged with another team basically.
I think it should have been Search Orga with Meepy, right?
Yes, correctly. They I don't know. They came to Playing Ducks or Playing Ducks came to them. I don't know. Like we merged the teams.
Yeah, yeah.
There wasn't a lot of like when we call it an orc. I don't know if we really want to call it an orc. There was a person somewhere in Germany that had a team by that name, and then we just did what we did, and every now and then we would have a message forth and back on TeamSpeak or an email with the people that owned the
Yeah,
team, right?
it was a very casual affair back in the day. Like,
yeah, and
I think
also,
Continuum
like,
was also like a. I think
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like a closet org or whatever. Like it's just some guy
yeah,
in a closet
we
running
call
it.
them, yeah, we call them basement orcs.
Yeah.
It like I think we were one of the first teams in Europe to get paid, and we were getting paid like 500 euros a month.
Wow.
And that was like, I think that was after we actually made Pro League finals.
Yeah.
So it wasn't even for a long period of time. It was a mess. It was, you had an orc because then you had someone to pay for T-shirts with the logo on, and you, if you ever made LAN, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And you would always be sold the idea that, well, the orcs would pay for travel, but as you get into esport, you start realizing that there is no paying for travel because the gaming
does it.
Yeah, like the TO will always do it, at least if it's a tournament worth going to.
Yeah, yeah.
So you kind of sell your soul for a mouse mat and a polo, but at least you have a team to play under, right?
Yeah, I mean, some people only got G Fuel or whatever, so
Exactly.
I did want.
It took until it took until the merge with the French for us to start having like decent structure and winning.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was a hell of a run up until like, we had some really good games, and we also had some massive failures. But
Yeah.
I think everyone there learned a lot about a few things that they probably wanted to keep doing, and then a few things that they didn't want to do again.
Yeah.
So
And I do want to talk about that team because Meepy comes in and you think he's a classic IGL, but you've kind of mentioned that when you were with WTF, like you were doing some IGLing as well. Like, how did that structure work in Year 1 Season 3 with Meepy and Panics and Enemy? Like, how did that structure work? Because clearly it was effective because you made it to the Grand Finals of the Pro League Finals. Like, you know, you were in there.
and through, it was good. It was, to start with, the difficulty was a bit about, I wouldn't call it respect, but it was difficult to get the IGL role to have enough weight that people would actually do what they were asked. Because all of a sudden, the players had more experience than the players that joined us had more experience than we did.
Yeah.
In terms of playing as a team. I'd say together, like the French guys, when they were playing together and roaming, they would generally communicate in French internally. And then me or Meepy would have to yell at them a bit to try and get some English out of them so we knew what was going on. Because we could just hear gunshots and some people dying, and then, I mean, are you good?
Yeah.
So there was a lot of forth and back and some heated discussions about that. But it ended out okay. I would do some IGLing, then I would take a break from IGLing. Meepy would do some. Then we would try have one of the French ones do some of the IGLing. There was a bit of a struggle with that because it fell back into being half French, half English.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you just don't have time to sit and think about what you want to say, so you do what comes natural.
Yeah.
So we swapped back again, and I think both Meepy and I were, I don't know, It was, let's say, me a month, him another month, forth and back until we found something that kind of worked. And at the end of it, I think it ended out with I got an offer to go to E3 and knew like in advance. So we kind of pushed it that maybe it would be an idea that he just IGLs full on.
Yeah.
So we don't have to do all the swapping, because if I'm away for a bit and then it doesn't make sense and we have to find a stand-in and stuff.
Yeah.
But the most difficult thing in my experience with all of that is to get 5 people that generally don't work in a team culture to work in a team.
Yeah.
It's easy enough to find good players. That's never the issue. And it's probably also the takeaway for anyone watching that actually want to compete. It doesn't matter if you're the best player in the world. If you're difficult to play with, then you might find a spot on a team, but you're just not going to win.
Yeah. I mean, look at Simple's career in CS. Undisputed GOAT, but like, how many championships does he really have despite all those legendary performances?
Yeah.
Yeah. I did want to ask about, your transition to Blackbeard, because you weren't always a Blackbeard player. You were on the Ash, you were on the Sledge, you were roaming smoke, which back in the day, it wasn't as crazy as it sounds. It is not as crazy as it sounds for the time.
That shit was so good. You could throw a
SMG11
C4
crazy.
like 4 meters and you had an ACOG on the SMG11.
Yeah. Why transition to the Blackbeard, and like what resonated with him? Because I mean, clearly you like the op. You got a tattoo of him on your hand.
So Shadow was actually our Blackbeard when he came out, and then he didn't want to play Blackbeard. I think there's a VOD of it somewhere. It's a Clubhouse game, and I remember the after game talk, like some snippets of it. He was complaining that Blackbeard didn't work for him, and it was useless operator, or like not that it was
useless.
bad, but it was
800 HP
it was
shield.
horrible to play.
Yeah, yeah.
And he didn't feel like he could do the role and all of that. And I said, oh fuck it, I'll do it. And then I just thought it was hilarious because people got so angry. And then I started messing around with, like, I think, well, I was definitely the first to do it in competitive, and it was funny because everyone thought it was a bad idea until they played against it, and then they didn't like it. I put a suppressor on and a laser.
I did have a question about that.
Because when you do that, I put the laser on the wall, and everyone goes, "Oh, there's the noob with the laser," and they peek into it, and it's a Blackbeard. And old Blackbeard had 1200 HP on the shield and no extra shields, and it didn't really crack, and they couldn't hear, and they didn't get any vapor trail indicators from where you're shooting at. So I could be wall banging through a wall as much as I wanted to, and they would never shoot back. And even if they did shoot back, they would never get a headshot.
Oh my god.
So I just tried to abuse that as much as I could. I've always looked at there's a Korean StarCraft player once that said something like, when broken stuff comes out, I want to be the best one with the broken stuff.
Yeah.
Because instead of spending time complaining that it's too strong, just put effort into being a little bit better than the other guys that do the strong stuff, right? They get another couple of rounds with it on their side, and we get a couple of rounds with it on our side, so we better make sure we win the ones we have.
Yeah.
And then you give your feedback in, like, behind the scenes directly to, like, those. I had plenty of issues with Blackbeard and other operators, and it just kind of became a meme. Because if you play Blackbeard, you're the Blackbeard player. That's just how it is. Like, I never played the dude in anything but competitive up until it started bothering people. Then I played him in ranked every day. I would much rather play Ash ACOG. That was the fun thing. If I could play whatever I wanted, I played like a kind of support role Ash.
Yeah.
Which was also not a thing you saw a lot of back then, but you basically had to remove barbed wire with your Ash charges because they took free hits, and they were annoying.
Too. Like the hitbox was janky. Sometimes you hit it and it just didn't.
They slowed you down so much as well. So you used that a lot for it, and it did 90 damage from floors, so you kind of used them in for damage in certain positions as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Blackbeard was never like it was not a self-inflicted thing. I didn't go, oh, I want to play that guy. Not at all actually. And then eventually onto playing Ducks, I tried to push it onto another guy who actually no, he said Blackbeard was too easy to play, so we hadn't played 3 scrims in a row, and he it was the only 3 scrims he ever had with a negative KD.
My God.
So I took it back.
Yeah. I did want to ask about the Grand Finals versus Continuum because
Yes.
for a lot of people this is a big deal. You know, most people don't even make it to a Grand Finals of a pro league, which for newer viewers this is the equivalent of a major. It's what the majors were called before. Yada yada yada. It's a big deal, and z1ronic was in possibly one of the best Grand Finals. Gotta thank you for that. You got me into the Z Sport. Like I watched that match and I was like, this is kind of hype. You know, I'm sold. I'll buy in. What was it like going up against Continuum? Because, you know, Troy at this point, legendary IGL, but at the time, like, he was known as this almost counter-stratting god, right? Like, what was it like going up against this all-NA roster, like, Canadian, NBK, Young, these legendary NA players?
I think we were lucky because we had the underdog aura to such an extent that we wouldn't embarrass ourselves if we got railed. Like it wouldn't matter. Yeah, I mean, it would matter to us, but we would just be forgotten the next day, right? If we didn't perform, no one would notice. They would just be like, oh, they got lucky.
Yeah.
We shouldn't even have been at the finals because if it wasn't for someone recounting the points, we wouldn't have gone. There was a recount of round difference before we even got to go to Poland. Because we were even with
Penta.
I think it was Penta. Yeah.
You had a 3-way win-loss record with Penta and G-Bots, and then you had a round differential tie with Penta, and you won the head-to-head, or you tied in the last match of the last play day, where it was like you won. They won 1 map in max OT. You won 1 map in regulation.
Yeah. Like we didn't know. The day that the regulation and all that stuff was done, we didn't know.
Really?
We thought we weren't going. I was at work and got a message at like 6 o'clock in the evening. Yo, we gotta get ready and we gotta scrim because we're going to the finals.
Oh.
I'm like, okay, what? And we're maybe like weeks out here, max.
Yeah.
So we had to quickly get together some new stuff, and we had pretty damn good strats and very, very difficult to counter strat setups in general because the way the final match of the whole thing, Bank, is the perfect example of how we wanted to play. We would try to push directly to a site as in a straight line as possible, with as little extra work as possible. So no matter how you go about counter-stratting, your best bet is generally to have more players than us in front of us.
Yeah.
And we would use all the utility to try and deal with that, and there wasn't as much back then.
Yeah.
So we were very not immune, but it was very difficult to counter-strat it. And it also ends up being our mistake on one of our default setups that the last round goes the way it did.
Yeah.
I mean, there's plenty of rounds where we lose straight up because they just played better, and there's plenty of rounds they lost because they played better. But there was one round where we made a massive mistake, and that happened to be the last one, which is an unfortunate one to make it in, because had it been the round, you know, in the start, no one would have cared or noticed, but it stays with you a bit more when it's the last one, and that was one of those cases of someone making an individual choice and not communicating it. That goes to push the point in that it's better, like it's fine you fuck up, but you tell everyone, and generally you just don't do your own thing if you're in a team, because it'll hurt you way more than it'll help.
Yeah.
But I mean, going into it, we didn't even expect to win against Most Wanted.
Really?
Yeah, because someone. So we hadn't scrimmed or planned or anything on Canal, and
Oh,
we made a mistake in terms of picking Canal because
okay.
Canal was their best map, and I can't remember if we were just arrogant and cocky enough that we thought it probably didn't matter, or if we actually thought they weren't good on Canal. But for some reason, we end up playing Canal against the team that is the best team in NA on Canal,
Yeah.
and we end up winning off the back of like insane clutches by Meepy and Panics.
It was a 2v5, I want to say?
Yeah, we should not have been in the finals. They really did some work there. Then we get into the final and everything works pretty well. We get to bank and we're like, we have this. Like, we don't lose bank. We just don't.
Yeah.
Our drone setup, the way we had our attacks on bank, no one could roam ever.
It was like the most modern like drone network to watch flanks that you could ever fucking imagine. But
We were
in
the
year
first-
one, when you could only have 5 drones out at a time, like watching those VODs, genuinely impressive for the time and like the restriction on drones.
And you had no operator that would like indicate where the drones were, right?
Yeah.
So it was hard to hunt them, but I basically at one point requested that we. For me, it makes sense that instead of having an entry and then have a guy drone and all this, we go get our drone set up and then we have one guy sitting in like a key position. For anyone listening that understands the like old bank setup, he would be sitting in what's probably called electric.
Yeah, yeah.
By the back alley in that little room, and we would have 4 drones placed around the map. One in Telos, one in Skylight, one in Kitchen, and then a free moving drone that could back up any of the other positions if they were called. And this player would just be sitting there just spamming through the drones. There's no vigil, so you don't have to worry about that. But even when vigil came, there would be an indicator that something was moving past. You just couldn't see it, right?
Yeah.
And they were just set up to tell us if anyone passed from point A to point B. That was the only job of that drone, was to let us know if someone was roaming. Because the way the strat worked and the way we wanted to do it is that if you send someone out to fight us or to roam, we're gonna push site harder, so he has to push faster, or he has to fall back. But we know that there's one less player on site.
Yeah.
So do we get a kill? Then we're 4 people against 3 instantly, right? Because our roam dude or our roam hunter killer dude
Yeah.
can sit there and just do nothing until people pass the drone, and then he's ready to shoot them in the back anyway.
Yeah.
So it made us never have any worry about roaming at all.
It was I having watched it back, it was like crazy how thorough the setup was. I genuinely loved it having watched it back. I do want to ask about SI though, because coming in, SI is an interesting one because there were 2 invited teams, one per NA and EU, and then there was the qualifiers. And Sisu was the team invited. And if you look at the year as a whole, they were in every Pro League finals. They were probably the most qualified, but
Yep.
you were in the previous like grand finals of the most recent season of Pro League. Was there kind of like some like salt or anything of being like, well, damn, why wasn't it us? Because you had to go
No.
through the open bracket, and that's
If we won, I think it would have been us.
okay.
Maybe I don't even know if it would have been, but no. I mean, all of that stuff is earned. So
Yeah.
the teams that get to go, I mean, if you don't, no participation medals, right? Fuck that.
Yeah.
If you get to go, you earned it, and then you try best to win. We watched it as a team, and then we tried to improve, and yeah, absolutely no hard feelings on that stuff.
Yeah, and coming into year 2, season 1, there was a pretty big shakeup because the French left for Vitality, and now you've got Lackey and the Swedes, which I'm sure that's a whole saga in itself. But did you feel like you guys were coming in as one of the favorites of this season of Pro League? Because year 2, season 1, you've got Sisu and G-Bots, like obviously very some pretty consistent top contenders. But, like, was Penta on the radar? Did you know Penta was going to be the sleeper team that turned into the dynasty, were you worried about like Millennium or Vitality, or were you kind of like, no, we with 3 like spots to go to land, we have a good chance of qualifying?
Well, I think it was very different from a like being inside it
Yeah.
that time was very different because Penta was the one team that we were afraid of.
Oh, okay.
Not really the other, like if you go back to before Millennium when it was Youngsters, we were the first team to beat them on Consulate.
Yeah.
The map that they never lost on, we destroyed them on that map. We were afraid of Penta because they were structured as all hell.
Yeah.
And it was so annoying to play against. Because they didn't take as many risks as other teams. And that makes you uneasy, and it makes you take some risks to make something happen. And when you then fail, it hurts the team ego during the game, right?
Yeah.
It's that same thing with the suppressed Blackbeard laser gun, right? When you're the one that peaks that, you're not as cocky in the next round. And it affects you through the game, no matter how much you try to not let it. Not that I think we were much better or even better than the other teams. We just knew how to deal with them better.
Yeah.
There were certain maps where we were pretty sure we were going to win if we played a certain team, and certain maps we knew we shouldn't play. But against Penta, we were a little worried about everything, to be honest.
Yeah.
Or at least had a lot of respect for the way they played. They were really difficult to play against.
Yeah, I did want to ask about playing them against them on Consulate, because for my money, in year 2, you're, especially season 1, you're probably one of the only teams that gave them a run for their money on Consulate, which is impressive. Like, what was it like playing them on this map? Because especially for those early days, it was their staple.
I think we spent all of our effort finding out how to break a few key points on the map, and then we just hoped that was good enough.
Yeah.
Because like if a team is super structured and they have really, really good fundamentals on a map, it becomes very predictable once you start breaking it.
Yeah.
So if you can move one person out of a spot, it's kind of like this default thing where like one's A, then B, then C.
Yeah.
Where some of the other teams didn't have that, and you just had to kind of win gunfights, right? So that came to our advantage a little bit because some of the positions they had we could deal with. But honestly, like playing them on almost any map was just not fun. Like it was so difficult and taxing compared to any other team.
Yeah. And so after year 2, season 1, you kind of step back from competitive play, and what caused this? Because I'm sure your stock as a player was pretty good, so you probably could have kept playing if you wanted, right?
Maybe. I got the invite for E3 from Ubisoft.
Yeah.
And that landed on one of the days where we would have a Pro League match.
Yeah.
Basically, since I was a kid, I've always wanted to see E3, and I was thinking, the age I had at that time, like how likely is it that I'm gonna go when I'm older? Am I really gonna, go out of my way to take a vacation to go to E3? Now I can go there as like a group of people. We get invited, get taken care of, all of that, and we get to see some VIP stuff. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
So I did a lot of thinking, and I said yes to it. Then, I mean, I told the team first, of course, but then we have to find some stand-in. And while we're looking for a stand-in, I am thinking that it's probably the most dickish thing you can do is to tell your team that you're going to E3, and we need to find someone that can play a game or two while I'm gone.
Yeah.
So I take a sub position completely willingly. Like, just put me on as a sub. I'll stay in the team and then take the other guys as the new fifth. And this was when Meepy was IGLing the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
So it had less of an impact because I was by no means even close to being the best player on the team. Like, I was probably maybe the 5th best player on the team at the very best. but I was pretty good at finding things in maps and setting up strats and stuff. So I
Yeah.
could help with that outside of playing. And
Okay.
honestly, it was the thing I enjoyed the most wasn't playing. It was figuring out the setups and how to break other teams. I find that way more interesting than actually controlling the mouse and keyboard.
So it was kind of like a logical conclusion of where you wanted to go at the time.
It was, yeah, and it was the compromise of there's two things I want and one thing I only get this one chance of, likely. And I tried playing on a main stage, and while that was fun, it was not something I thought I was gonna like. Maybe it would happen again, maybe it wouldn't, but it doesn't have that much value for me. Whereas the team aspect, the stratting, teaching, all of that stuff was really fun. And I was kind of hoping that coming back, maybe I could take like kind of a background role, help with building the strats and all that. And but it didn't make sense at that time. Teams didn't really have that.
Yeah, there wasn't really a coach until Shaz like popularized it by winning everything.
Yeah, but also Shaz actually approached us before he approached Penta all the way back.
Oh my!
And I'm really good friends with Shaz now, which is hilarious because I'm pretty sure I told him to go take a hike when he messaged us back then. Because he wrote like a long message about he had these plans and these, and I just thought, dude, like we're 5 people playing ranked at 4 in the morning, and you want to coach, like, stop. So I shut down the whole idea. Well, we all did on the team. We thought it was ridiculous. And he had all these promises. I thought, what a crazy dude. And then slowly he just earns it and earns it and earns it and builds the way up. And he learned a lot as well. He's changed so much since then. I think we probably all have. We were all almost 10 years older, right? But yeah, like that was humble beginnings for us all. I was the exact rank player that I disliked today. Like I was overly cocky, arrogant, dismissive. I mean, I'm still that, to be honest. I'm just older and better at it. But it was a mess in the early days. Like it really was.
Yeah.
But the game was simpler, so it made it easier to digest.
Yeah. And so, how did you get started with like the broadcast work? Was it the classic story of like, you know, Panky under the shady street lamp going, "Hey kid, you want to catch some? You want to do some analyst work?" Or like, how did you get started with that?
I think it might actually have been exactly that. I think Pinky asked me if I wanted to cast something with him for fun at one point, and then it lined up with having like we went to E3, so we got to talk to people, and there was other like people there that did stuff with esport, and I don't know. Then there was like a tiny gig for Nordic Cup or something, like some tiny small thing.
Yeah.
Then there was some Benelux, and basically they couldn't get any of the good casters because they were all busy casting the real stuff. So they tried some of us, and then it ended up being kind of funny. I never ever think I was even remotely good at casting. I think I was absolutely horrible. But what was fun was when I was casting with someone that was good at casting, and the only thing I added was like why they're doing this, why this is probably a mistake, why this won't work, why this will work, because the prediction rate was pretty damn good. It almost always went as I thought it would go, which I think some people enjoyed because they started to understand what was going on instead of it just being, it wasn't just 10 people running around shooting at each other.
Yeah.
There was a thing to it, right? And that probably pushed me into just wanting to do the analytic stuff way more than casting, because it's not my thing.
Yeah.
It feels so awkward. I can't get it fake excited. If someone does a 1v5, I'm sitting there thinking, what a bunch of goblins. How do they let him do that?
I think it's the classic.
You can't win a 5v1.
Yeah.
Right.
It's the classic plight of being a former pro player. It's like, that's not exciting. That's like that's a screw up by the other guys. You know?
But some people are just so good at. I don't even want to call it fake excitement, but they're good at being excited, right?
Yeah.
And they're good at hyping things up. We've had plenty of them. It just not me.
Yeah. I do want to ask because you are also like a prolific streamer, and from my understanding, you were also making content, which is why you would get to go to E3 in the first place. How did making content help you throughout your career? Because one thing I've always been personally harping on, and I know like a bunch of other people in the community do, is like if you're a player, make content, make content, make content. Be a person, like be somebody that people can watch and rally and recognize. How did it benefit you? Because some would say your career was pretty short. It was like only a year and a half or so, but clearly it worked out. It snowballed into something much greater thanks to like those humble beginnings and also getting started with like this streaming. How did it help?
It's dangerous calling them careers, right? Because the entirety of all the competitive play I've done is less than what a month of decent content creating would make.
Yeah.
So the content creating would actually be the career stuff, but all of that happened by accident. The first recommendation for anyone playing competitive is build your name up and build it up in a way where people are semi interested in your skill and your personality and all of that, not on the trash talk and all the other things, because the one day you fuck up, that's what like people are coming after, and you can't really regain it, right? You just become a meme.
Yeah.
So be careful with like do it at any cost. So some people are too quick to do everything they can to be noticed, and they'll start like extra drama for the sake of it, and it never ends well, to be honest.
Yeah.
But mine started like coming home from Poland after the finals. I think I had 40 followers on Twitter before that, and I knew every one of them by name, I think. To having a couple thousand before I landed again. And I thought that was insane. I was like, I couldn't understand why more than a bus full of people gave a shit who I was. And I streamed before going to Poland as well, but it was just for the other people I played ranked with and a few friends, and if you ever wanted to show something, it was the easiest way to show them was just link the stream, right?
Yeah.
Then people just started watching slowly, and I didn't do any YouTube. I just uploaded VODs of the stream to YouTube and checked every now and then I'd wonder why like 2,000 people checked an 8-hour VOD of a YouTube video. And I never put any soul into it, never did anything for it. Then I started getting invited to some of these like E3 and some of the other stuff, and it kind of just snowballed from there. I started taking the streaming a little bit more serious, did it a bit more like on a schedule, but I had a full-time job, so I came home at like 4 or 5 in the evening, and then I'd stream until 12.
Wow.
And then go to bed and get up at 4:30 or 5 and go to work. So I did like 2 years, I think, of max 5 hour sleep, max.
Jeez.
And it was 7 days a week. I had 23 or 22 24-hour streams in the first 2 or 3 years of streaming.
Wow.
So it was just do it enough. If you do it enough, and especially in the early days of Siege where there wasn't as many people doing it, if you're online all the time and you just get like 5 viewers more every stream, all of a sudden you're in the top 10. And when you're the guy who's always online when people log in, they get to work, you have the right the right streaming times, then it's fairly quick that you can climb. And then of course there's got to be some reason for people to watch you. Either you're funny, you're good, or you're different, whatever. Like there has to be a hook or something, right?
Yeah.
I think I was lucky. I looked a little different than some of the other ones on the main page of the Siege category, I guess. And I was a little bit older, and I never scream on stream. Like if I do, it's to piss off the Zoomers. Then I'll sneak up close to the microphone and do it to like scare people. But I don't get overhyped, and I think some people like to have that in the background.
Yeah.
So that just kind of became a thing, and eventually one day I was like, shit, like this actually makes money. So I went full time for a bit until until Siege started being not as fun for me, and I thought, fuck it, I'll put it on the back burner, and I'll get back to a normal job, and then I'll stream what I want when I want.
Yeah.
To not burn out, so maybe one day I would want to do it again.
Yeah. On the tail end of this interview, second to last question, because I am pretty sure I've kept you here longer than what I promised.
That's okay, man.
What do you think of the direction Siege has gone with kind of the slowing down and like some of these new operators that are coming out? You know, the scope change is a big one after the 1.5 being around forever and ever. You know, are the speed changes bringing us back to a place where you think Siege is kind of what it used to be, or are we just in a completely new dimension of what Rainbow Six Siege is?
I'm gonna be a real sad old boomer boy then. I think that so basically the entire team that worked on the original Siege is gone, right? Like
yeah.
It's all a new team. I think that their vision of the game is very different than the vision of the people that made the game. I'm in love with the game that was made originally.
Yeah.
Not the one we have now. I don't like the hand-holding, the participation medals, the catering, to like the system where I'm a massive hater on the rank system we have now with progression, and I'm not a fan of battle passes either. I don't like the fact that the only thing keeping players playing is progression and like little things popping up and flashing and giving you a dopamine hit. I want the game to be fun, and that's why you come back. Come back to play because it's fun to play with the people you're playing with and fun to play against the people you're playing against.
Yeah.
I think there is a massive amount of things they could do to improve the game. Adding grenade trajectories, in my opinion, is not one of them.
No, sir.
You take something that was a skillful thing and you give it to everyone.
It wasn't even that hard. It was like a small skill. It was like a small like learning curve, and then you've learned it, and you could really, really master, or you could just be like, I know mostly what I'm doing.
And if you look at grenade uses in Siege, like very few people in Siege understand that you can do pop flashes on hatches by throwing the flashbang up in the roof first, and it takes a second for it to bang right. So like old Oregon, you blow the hatch, you throw the flashbang straight up in the roof, it'll blow up like right under the hatch.
Yeah.
Small things like that you don't see people do, and you don't really see people try to look for them anymore either, because the game has gotten, and I know people will disagree, but I just don't think that's true. I think the game has gotten so easy now because there are so many options that you don't have to get good at things.
Yeah, you don't have to find the hidden edge of what you have available, because you can just pick a different option. You've got 10 billion to choose from.
It used to be worth gold to have a good thermite player. A player that knew how to get to the building without getting spawn peeked. Like, that was worth so much. Now it doesn't matter because, thermite isn't even, like, the most used hot bridge anyway, right?
No.
So, now you have thermite, you have Havana, you have Maverick, you have Ace, you have a hot bridge charge. Like, there are way too many options, in my opinion, for any of them to matter.
Yeah.
And it becomes this thing where if it's fun for everybody, it's fun for no one. And I think they've moved too far in that direction, and they've choked the creativity out of the game. Because while you might find one really cool thing with an operator, it has close to no value if a lot of other operators can do the same.
Yeah.
And I think that hurts the game. And then I think the whole like champ ranking system and all of that, like I've never been a fan of these top 500 things where people try to hunt that, and instead of hunting the improvement of getting better, they hunt the icon, and then they compare everyone with that icon to be the same. Not every diamond player is equally good.
Yeah.
Some of them can communicate. They're ways better than the ones that can't, right? At least in a team setting. We all know which ones we'd rather have on our team.
Yeah.
It's nice to be a good gunner, but it'd be really nice if you could say yes or no every now and then.
Or say I died in this position.
Right? Yeah, exactly. And I think those changes are some of the reasons that the game's moved in a direction where there is less communication about the game and more just banter and shit talk during the game.
Yeah.
I feel like when I watch people play it now, there's very little communication between rounds about what you're going to do in the next round. You go back in the earlier years of Siege, random people in ranked would talk about what operators they would pick, how they would play, and what they would do to win the round, right?
Yeah.
That just doesn't really happen anymore. And people generally copy what they see in competitive, but in a very, very weak way.
Yeah.
Like they copy the setup, but then they don't play the position.
Yeah, because playing the position is boring. Like, maybe
exactly.
It's a boring
Do
position.
the same setup,
gotta...
and then 4 people run and spawn peek, right? And now you have a setup that is actually horrible to play if you're a 1v5 or 1v3.
Yeah.
And it becomes a lot of this instant gratification attitude stuff where I do this because this is what the good players do, and then I also want to have fun, so see ya. And I used to think it was only the player's fault, but I think a lot of it is game design, and then also a younger generation of players might have pushed it a little bit more in the other direction, because some of us didn't grow up with TikTok and all of that. We couldn't swipe for the next fun thing all the time and had to learn to sit still for 5 minutes.
Yeah. I do think the game design has kind of like it doesn't decide everything about player behavior, but you can certainly push people in certain directions.
I think it's probably a 60-40 or 70-30 on the game design part for me.
Yeah.
And the range trajectory and the rank stuff is just a percentile of all the things I think push the game in the wrong direction.
Yeah. And
also the reason I took a break from the game. I mean, cheaters suck, but if the game's fun enough, then I don't really matter. I mean, then I can keep playing it, right?
Yeah.
But when the game isn't fun, when the cheaters aren't there, then it's like a lose-lose, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I think Siege is... Oh, hello! I think Siege is in an interesting position because, you can't just hit the reset button, but at the same time, like, continuing as you are is kind of like you're driving over the side of a cliff. So I do feel for the devs.
I don't know what they can do, because I always thought that the idea of adding a new operator every season was insane, because I can't see what they're gonna do like at the end.
Yeah. What's the end goal? When are you done?
Yeah, if you don't stop at some point, and then they say, oh well, 100 operators, sure, but that's too many. Like the time you have to pick, you can't possibly decide what setup you're going to be playing, and they can't possibly have any value if there's that many.
Yeah.
In my opinion, it was better when there was like 15 operators or 10. Like when you really had to choose, and it made a massive difference if you had one operator or another. I think that was a more interesting time. The same with the droning changes, right? It's never been as easy to drone as it is now, and people have never been as bad as at it as they are now.
Yeah.
Like people used to keep their drones alive for the whole game, because it really mattered. Now you can throw 2. I don't think they can't go back on it. They can improve a lot of small things that might make it more fun. But for me, the core Siege feeling probably can't come back again.
Yeah.
Because of the way that it's set up now.
Yeah. I think that's fair. You can't put the genie back in the bottle, as the saying goes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a shame. I fucking love the game though.
Yeah. Every time I play it with some good people, I'm just like, fuck, I can see what I fell in love with.
Yeah. It's without a doubt one of the best FPS games, and it has this thing that no other FPS game has done, right? Where you have so much control over the environment and the way that the other team can and will attack or defend. You don't really have that in other games. I really like Counter-Strike as well, and I like old Call of Duty, like Call of Duty 4 Pro Mod and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But they're gunner games, right? Like, sure, CSU lines and pop flashes and stuff and some smokes, but it's not the same as being able to shoot someone through 15 different layers of wood, a stairway, and a window.
Yeah.
There's another level of depth to Siege, and I think that's what has gone in the background because of the addition of all the stuff.
Yeah.
I made a semi-angry tweet about it the other day that there's never been as many options and things you can do in Siege, and I've never seen people be as
linear,
as uncreative. Yeah, like it's the same thing every round, more or less.
Yeah.
Even though you can do so much stuff now. And that's a shame, because if it's predictable and you have all of those operators, then half of them you could remove and people wouldn't notice.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we've been dooming about the game enough.
An angry old boomer.
And, I mean, it echoes a lot of what I've been thinking about, but I just haven't put it all into words or figured out precisely where the feeling's coming from. So I can definitely empathize.
Dangerous road to go down.
Yeah. I mean, shit. All the esports supers call me a boomer anyways. Might as well act like it.
Yeah.
Final question. What's next for z1ronic, and where can we find you? And also, is there anything you want to say or anyone you want to thank on the way on to close out?
I mean, fuck yeah. Like, everyone in Siege, because if it wasn't for that, then half of it wouldn't have happened anyway, right? Like, the devs, all the players, like, this idea of, like, self-made people doesn't exist. Like, no one ever got to anywhere by themselves.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I wouldn't have had the house I'm in now if it wasn't for people wanting to watch me play Siege. If it wasn't for the devs making the game, even the game that I'm railing on every now and then, there's a lot of people that have helped everyone get to where they are. So yeah, thanks to them. I'm gonna be touching grass a lot.
That's fair.
I do dog training now a lot.
Yeah.
So that takes 5 days a week out of the calendar, and then I'm back to doing my old construction job, just getting some fresh air, and then I do some stuff in the background with some consultant work on games, which is interesting, and I'll probably be able to share some more on that in, I don't know, a year's time or something. So there's a little travel for that every now and then, which is really fun, and that's also all because of the whole Siege thing, right? Like, if I hadn't done the competitive play, the commentating, all of that stuff, that would never have happened.
Yeah.
So it opened up a ton of doors. I'm still going to be streaming and playing, but it's going to be on a scuffed schedule when I can find the time, because now I'm like every other person. I play video games to wind down when I can. So it'll be on the stream. Maybe one day the YouTube channel will start doing something again. But that's kind of been on hold for, I think, almost 2 years now or something.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, we'll see. I'm not going anywhere. I'm just not on as much.
Yeah. Alrighty.